Okay, welcome once.
Okay, it said the
We're
broadcast is live.
having technical difficulties. We are back on again, and hopefully you'll be able to come on live. Apologize for just technology. I don't know what happened. Never had it happen in 3 years, but again, as I said, this program right here has affected me more than any of the programs that we've had before, and so I think it's important that our listeners will be able to get a chance to hear your story, and hopefully after hearing your story, uh, it will affect them and impact them, and they'll get a clear, better understanding what it's like to be a part of the foster care system. Because I guess unless you've actually been a part of the foster care system, no one has a clue or idea of what all you are have had to endure. So I think I finally got on my Facebook page now live. So uh, those who are on here should be able to see it now. Appreciate your patience. If you're on here, let us know that you're on here. On It's My Turn Now. Again, as I said, we had difficulties on here, but now it seems that we're on here. So please drop us in the message box. Let us know that you're on here. Again, we're dealing with the subject of mental health and the foster system, and the challenges that our guests have faced being part of foster care. I'm going to start with you. It's back to you, Dolly. Before we got cut off, uh, tell me, what would you want the audience to know most about your experience in the foster care?
The trauma that you receive going through the foster care journey may be with you for the rest of your life. Um, it's part of shaping your personality, and it is, as I am now, I'm still a patient of mental health. I've been going to mental health clinics and doctors and so forth for a number of years now. The most consistent has been in the last 4 years,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and and all I can say is it's just that's it becomes a part of your behavior, your nature,
Right.
so to speak.
April said something I thought was pretty interesting, and you can share it with us. And I'm not sure how what you said. You say you don't feel normal. Well, can you repeat that you told me earlier?
Um, I think it's just a constant wondering who you are and where you came from.
Mm-hmm.
So even though I was with my biological mother up until I was about 4, I I saw different things in her that as I grew older, I saw in myself.
Mm-hmm.
So to an extent, um, I knew that certain things that I did, such as shoplifting and compulsive lying and things like that, no disrespect to her. But those were things that I had witnessed growing up, and those were behaviors that I didn't quite take accountability for until I got older.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew to an extent where I came from, but I didn't fully understand, um, when I would have outbursts or when I had behaviors that weren't quite normal, such as mental, behavioral, or even learning. I had issues with learning. And growing up with my adoptive mother, who was extremely smart,
Mm-hmm.
she would always tell us, like, I just don't understand you guys. I don't understand. You probably got that from Ellen. She knew our biological mom's name. And
Mm-hmm.
so she would always say, you must have got that, you must have got that from Ellen. And so it's like, okay, so all of these negative things um, that I'm dealing with, I'm just being told like, oh, that must come from
Mm-hmm.
over there. But I think that a lot of people can attest to the fact that growing up in the 70s, 80s, and so on and so forth, mental health was not really a topic of discussion. I
Mm-hmm.
know I would tell my adopted mom, I'm sad, like I'm sad, and as I got older, I learned the word depression. And she,
Mhm.
girl, you ain't depressed. Girl, look at this room. You clean this room, you won't be you won't be depressed. So I would clean my room, and I'm like, oh, like, okay, I feel a little bit better, but then the sadness would come back.
Right, right.
So
She was partially right.
yeah,
Studies have shown that if you have a clean room, that can
mhm,
affect your mental, but it's not going to really affect the depression, but it could
yeah,
probably add to the depression.
yeah.
So I think must have been pretty difficult for a child to uh, hear hear their foster parent uh, compare you to your mother and in such a negative way, you
Mhm.
know. And how do you think that impacted you?
Um, it impacted me significantly, especially when it came time to actually get to know her.
Hmm.
I became an adult. I could not get past. I think that sometimes it's an out of sight, out of mind situation, and when you're not around somebody for a long period of time, you in my mind, I had hoped that after all that time she had changed, and when we did come back together, I just didn't see any changes or any growth. And so it just made me feel like, man, is this going to be me? Is this going to be my life as I get older? And I had a lot of fear that stemmed from that, because I did not want to be like that.
Right.
But I was always told growing up that that's who I was. That was what I was like. And so I will say I was very fearful, and like you, Dolly, I did a lot to prove that I was not that. But in doing so, I was not um I really wasn't able to fix the things that were still in me, that were still in my DNA. Instead, I brushed it off, or pushed it to the side, and had this facade, and it caught up with me. So
What do you think has changed, or what has been most effective in helping you to deal with that? I know, Dolly, you said that you had therapy. What about yourself, April? Did you attend therapy sessions as well? Have
I
therapy?
have, I have, but I honestly, it, as cliche as it may sound, the biggest help for me in my life has been God, because I think that as we get older, you realize that you spend so many years of your life wanting to belong or wanting to fit in with people, and
Hmm.
that's not really where God has you,
Okay.
or wants you to be. So I think that for me, it was accepting the fact that this is my story. Um, no, I don't claim, any of those negative things. I am a child of God. So I think that the biggest factor in overcoming a lot of those negative thoughts and feelings is knowing who I am in God.
Okay. Thank you. Very good. That's a very good answer. Uh, Dolly, tell me, what if you were to talk to the church, someone in the church? What do you think the church could do to help in the situation, or to deal with mental health, or just deal with people who, because you two are in a unique situation, being brought into foster care, and sometimes people don't understand the challenges. And after talking to you two, it made me more aware of a lot of challenges that you had. I wasn't aware. You just said what people brought up. Thankful to have someone, but every foster parent is not a good foster parent. Every foster parent is not concerned about your welfare. Some people just want that check. So Dolly, tell us about that. Tell us a little bit something.
Absolutely. What the church, in terms of what the church, I grew up in multiple homes in multiple churches. I went all the way from Catholic, Pentecostal, Apostolic, Baptist, Jehovah Witness, you name it. And I put them all in my book because I remember going to each, especially the Catholic Church. I said, this is good exercise because they was getting up and down on these benches and stuff. And I'm thinking like, okay, I'm young, but and this is getting on my nerves. So, but the church in general did not address what was going on with me because they didn't have a relationship as such with me to know enough about me to know what was going on. They just knew that I came with this family. Oh, isn't that a beautiful thing that, the people, the people who open their homes to you get the accolades, not the people that are placed into the homes. We that are the foster children, we are just like the window dressing to some extent because while we have to interact with each of these family members, the church doesn't know what's going on behind closed doors. And so all they know is what they see on TV, which we thought for years watching Tarzan that Black people swung on trees like monkeys. It's a fact. It's if it's not an awareness as much as it is a fact. Okay, so let's go back to, I grew up in a lot of churches. Like I said, most of the churches only saw me as I was living with that family. Oh, that's little Dolly or little Maria, whatever they called me at the time and stuff like that. Or yeah, she's living with them. Yeah. And they made you feel bad. You needed to be pitied is what it was. You need to be pitied because and like they used to tell me, don't feel bad that you don't know who your mother and father is because God knows who your father is. God is your father, and it's probably better. You're probably better off not knowing because there's a lot of people that got family that mothers and fathers, and they treat their kids worse than you do. That's not helping.
That's what I was going to ask you. People mean well and they say things like that, but what type of emotions did you have when you heard that?
Again, you have whatever self-esteem that you try to have, or self-assurance, or whatever you want to call it, sense of self is already diminished. You already know that you don't belong to these people. You're living in a borrowed room. You're living I had to even be careful what I ate because I didn't always eat what everybody else ate. So here's the deal. When you hear that, you just think that you're worthless. And that plays a great role. It impacts you to the point that I am never going to be good enough. That's where I'll go into I go into the hyper I can't think of the name of it right now, but hyper vigilant. I'm hyper vigilant. That's what they term me as being an overachiever. I go into hyper vigilant. My job is to tell you you're wrong. My job is to prove to you you are wrong. I'm right, you're wrong. No, I can be better than this. And so and that's where I got sick because I was so busy trying to prove that I'm not what you said I am. I'm not out there having babies. They told me all I was gonna be was somebody that was gonna have a house full of babies. I don't even have children. I don't have not one child. I got a dog.
Right. Is there
I'm 6 years old with no children? Now that is a stigma because you go like, wow, didn't nobody even want her? No, that again, you fight against stuff that people just don't know. And you're right, they say the stupidest stuff thinking that they're saying it from God, and it's not God telling you this. Let's be real. God didn't tell you to tell this person that.
Yeah, now Maria,
I done
now
got
it seems to
excited
me,
now.
yeah, that's just it seems like to me, Maria, just talking about has triggered a lot of emotions that you know that you've experienced, and I imagine that has to be difficult. Tell me, what about you, April? And I'm listening to what Dolly is saying, and I certainly understand how you could feel that way, Maria. And I mean, you're bringing out a lot of points, and like I said before, out of all the programs I've had, this when I had you two on the last time, it impacted me more so than any program that I had because I was unaware of the challenges that you all have. And is what do you think? And I'll start with you, April. What do you think? And April, you seem uh, you and Dollar brought up in probably two different generations, so you may
Mhm.
see things differently than Dollar because I think the laws and things change in the 90s and mental health became more aware, and so how they dealt with it. I'm not saying to dismiss any of the challenge you have, but how old were you what year do you think when you were first placed in foster care, Dolly?
I was in foster care at 6 years old.
No, I'm saying what year?
Oh, 1960 something. Yeah.
So
60,
1960, and
63, something like that. Yeah.
right, and so April, you were first fall, and what year do you know where you first placed in foster care?
Um, Probably about 1991 ish.
30 years apart. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is, we
That
I'm not minimizing
No,
anything
no,
that
I get
April
it.
went through, but what I'm saying is that a lot of challenge you had. Thank God that society has changed. They're more aware. The laws have gotten more stringent. Because I think that to hear what you are saying, how they talk to you, and I don't know if you did you experience that talking down April yourself in your foster care. What was your experience?
Within the homes, yes. A lot of talking down, especially when you weren't compliant. Like I said, the woman that adopted me, she would often say a lot of things. I think that um, I went to several different schools. I think it really depends on the demographic.
Hmm.
Um, because when I was at IPS, it was like the norm. It wasn't really, nobody really noticed or cared.
Hmm.
Um, by the time I was adopted, we went to primarily private schools. And so we were never made fun of. We were never talked down to or anything. That was kind of safe for home. But there were a lot of comments like Miss Dolly mentioned, like, oh, maybe, it's for the best, or, um, things like a lot of pity. So it was a lot of that.
Okay. Also, for those who came on, we've been having problems. I did put the link on here because there are some that were trying to click on the link when we're having trouble, and so I put the link on here. If someone wants to come on live, they can click on the link and they should be able to come on live because I there's about 3 or 4 people that clicked on the link earlier that weren't there. So, what is it like for you now? Do you Either you can answer this question. Do you feel more a sense of normalcy, or you feel like because of your experience that you will never uh, feel a sense of normalcy? And what does that look like to you?
For me, is what's normal for me is to be by myself. What's normal for me, I keep saying this, that I'm a recluse. I'm not antisocial. I am a sociable person, but I feel better by myself because I don't have to prove myself to anybody anymore. I think because I've gotten to the age that I've gotten, that the society norms have fallen off, the church norms have fallen off, because I now recognize that a lot of things happen because of ignorance, and then a lot of things happen because I wasn't aware of what I personally was going through. I had no idea that I didn't know I had a personality disorder. I was diagnosed with dissociative behavior, which means there are a lot of things that happen that I can't recall because another personality took over. And uh, how many, I have no idea, but I do recall some things. And when and time and space had left, and I'm going like, well, how did I get here? And just a whole lot of stuff. Some things was like in a dream. I thought I was going through a dream like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's easier to stay alone than to be with somebody, because I don't have to explain why I don't feel good today to you, or
Mm-hmm.
why I can't make it through the day right now. And I love the Lord, and I love God's people, and I believe I'm called of him to be whatever it is that he's called me to become, and so forth like that. But it is a struggle. It
Mm-hmm.
is a struggle, moment by moment, because anything, like, I just had that trigger while we were talking.
Mm-hmm. I
Well,
saw that. Yeah, I saw
well,
that.
and and some of it can be. I thank God that I overcome it quickly now. Some of it lasts for days, weeks, and like, like people now, they're understanding the bipolar nature of people and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that, where they that they have the manic, and then they have the depressive, stuff like that. Now they just now coming into the awareness of bipolarism, and the spectrum for autism and stuff like that. All this stuff was not known of 50 years ago. So
Mm-hmm.
when I was a teenager and a young person, a lot of the stuff that I was experiencing, I had no idea that's what I was experiencing.
Right. Let me ask you a question, April. Are you able to relate to some of the things that Dolly's saying, and what part of what she's saying you're able to relate to?
Um, so a lot of things, yes. I struggle with my own mental health, but I have taken steps to try to alleviate
Mm-hmm.
um, a lot of those, especially like depressive symptoms. Um, uh, and also, I can say that mental health, even when I was younger, wasn't really addressed the way that it could have been. I would say should have been, but I don't think that our parents knew. I think they were learning themselves.
Right.
So as I've gotten older, I've kind of learned, um, although I don't think that certain things were acceptable, I have learned to be a little bit more understanding, especially as I study mental health myself. I think that the biggest help for me has been forgiveness and trying to understand that not everybody has the knowledge, not everybody has the resources. My adopted mom, she would say and do a lot of things that I didn't understand or didn't like as a child. And as I got older, I resented her a lot. And I still, to this day, I struggle from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, I've become more understanding of the fact that she, adopted 6 kids.
Mm-hmm.
She did not understand us at all. And I think that that's the biggest issue with foster care, adoption, and mental health is understanding that these children that you bring into your home are not your children. They're not you. So you're not going to understand when they do things that you don't like.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think that as time goes on, mental health has become, a lot less, I guess, of a taboo.
Right.
So, I think that it definitely makes even people like us more aware and more, I guess, open to the fact that yes, we do need help with
Right.
certain things. A lot of people laugh and joke, "Oh, you're bipolar. Oh, she's depressed." It's like, okay, you know, I'm no longer too embarrassed or ashamed to say I might need to get some help in this area.
Good for you. Good for you.
Yeah.
I think that's so important. You know, and I think it's because I'm a therapist because I deal with that.
Mm,
Some people are watching this may not understand, the impact of what you later experience. But when you don't have your own identity and you're searching for your identity, uh, it can be challenging when you have to adjust your personality, for each foster home you've been to,
Mhm.
that becomes a challenge. So you're not really yourself. And once you get used to one person, then you go along to get along.
And I know for me, that went with me into adulthood. I
Right.
would be in a relationship, I would change for a man
Yes,
because
exactly.
loved and accepted. Or, like you, Dolly, I grew up in various churches. I remember going to a Catholic church. It was fairly laid back. You could wear what you want to wear, and you leave church and or mass, and you really don't think too much of it. And then when I turned 17, 18, I met an apostolic boy, nice to this day, wonderful, young man or what have you. And I became apostolic, and I started trying to wear the skirts and trying to impress the people and learn the Bible. And a lot of it was for show. It wasn't really a genuine relationship that I had with God. It was just, I want to fit in with these people.
Right.
But on the other hand, that hindered my growth and walk with God, because when they didn't accept me, I I was furious, and I was like, this is God. Why can't you just make me normal? Why can't I be like everybody else? Um, I've since overcome that need or desire to belong. I think that what God has for me is for me. But when you struggle with identity, you can be one person today and another person tomorrow, and you're really not being true to yourself. And I think that can be the biggest hindrance, especially when that the person that you really are, or the situation that God brought you out of, you could be using that to help people. But
Right.
instead, I was pretending that I didn't have any problems.
Right.
I was pretending that I didn't have um, any I guess any issues in general. I just, like I said, I had this facade going, and
Right.
it can be it can be disappointing when people aren't accepting of it. But um, as you get older and more mature and experience things, you start to realize the why.
Right. Right.
So
Very good. Rose Maxey says, at what part of your experience did you start allowing people to help you or love on you and not taking it as pity? Very good question. Thank you for sharing it, Rose. Uh, I'll
great
start.
question.
Okay, I'll let you start, Dolly.
Who? Oh, I started loving myself once I learned who I was.
Mm-hmm.
Once I learned 4 years ago that I never had boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
Boundaries were never a part of my life. That's why I was raped. That's why I had a lot of issues with domestic violence and stuff like that. Those were all because I never had boundaries established in my life, because I was abandoned from birth. So there was nobody to pick up the pieces to give me any training to learn this is a no touch. As years gone by, they're training our young people with a no touch and a good touch, bad touch, and stuff like that. And so it took me into my 60s before I became aware of. Once I started having boundaries, that's when I learned to love myself. And no, you will not say this to me, or no, you will not treat me this way. And no, I learned the word no. No became so prevalent that I would say no before I even thought about it. No came out until some of my friends go, well, hold up, can I tell you what I need first, or can I tell you what I was going to go, like, what? And then they go, no. It got to the place that I got good at saying no. I was, and then I learned eventually to taper it off and weigh it. But it's just like anything else. When you come out of bondage and you go into freedom, you go hog wild. because you haven't been trained in freedom. And then once your freedom is tempered, then you start learning the differences on what the dynamics should be.
Right. No to you most likely was taking control. I have control now. I don't have to accept this. So no became very important to you.
Yes.
So I can certainly understand that. Um, the challenges that most people, men and women, deal with identity crisis, understanding who they are and no understanding their self-worth. But I imagine the trauma and the abuse that you both experienced made it that much more difficult, because there are people who did not respect you. There were people who did not appreciate you, and there are those who did not basically value you, and so no one installed that self worth in you that you should have received as a child, and so it makes it even difficult as you become adult. Again, as you said, the personality disorder is that the having to change with different people, and sometimes there becomes a defense mechanism because no one wants to experience hurt, no one wants to experience rejection. So if you can go into your own little world, your own little, your own little inner self, and that's a place of comfort for you, a place of safety, where you isolate by yourself, your own world. Did you experience that, April, yourself coming up?
Experience what exactly?
More or less, kind of into your own world. Sometimes people can turn into themselves as a place of safety, and so that a place of comfort, so that you won't feel the pain and rejection and hurt of the outside world.
Didn't become that way until my 30s. When I was younger, I really really wanted to fit in any and everywhere.
Mhm.
So if I had to dress like a preppy girl one day to fit in with these girls, or if I had to be a goth the next day, like, I mean, I just wanted to find a group. I wanted to find my niche. And I wanted a lot of friends. I wanted to be surrounded by people. I wanted to be liked, whatever I had to do. I just wanted, if I had to drink, if I had to smoke, if I had to do go to Bible class, like whatever it was, wherever I fit in, that's where I was at. It
Mhm.
wasn't until probably like my early 30s, maybe late 20s, that I became more, I would probably say it was my early 30s that I became more to myself. And a lot of that was a defense mechanism, stemming from disappointment and a lot of death in my family.
Mm.
I've had two siblings that have passed, and well, three actually. One of my adoptive sisters also passed away.
Mm.
So, like I, hmm,
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
yeah. And so, it was really hard, especially with my two biological siblings, the way they passed away. It was, mental health and addiction, and it really made me become more aware of myself and where I came from, and the things that I needed to fix. So I've spent a lot of time kind of working on myself over the past few years, and I don't know if that was a defense or coping mechanism, or if it was just me needing to take a break. You know,
Hmm.
I don't know, but
Great.
my first experience with allowing someone to love me would probably be my own child. That would probably be the first experience, that I really had with actually letting somebody. And even then, sometimes I would say, like, am I really a good mom? I struggle with
Yeah.
those thoughts, but my daughter and I are very close, as you probably see. And
Yeah.
so, that would probably, to answer, was it Roxy, to answer her question. I didn't want to.
Rose Maxie.
Yeah, Rose. I'm sorry, Rose. I didn't want to skip her question.
Okay, very good. Sister,
And see, with me not having siblings at all, I grew up. I just found my siblings' ancestry. I did a commercial. I just submitted my commercial to Ancestry because they asked me to give them feedback on how I found my family in this past year, and I still don't know them. But growing up, knowing that you don't have any biological mother, father, sister, brother, cousin, auntie, anybody. I grew up alone, and that's probably why I act like I'm alone.
Yeah. See,
And not having children, I just have the little dog and stuff like that. So that's my coping mechanism, is to just thank God I had the service animal, because otherwise I I was alone with before I had the heart attack and stroke to have a service animal. I just always was alone. So um siblings, if you had a sibling and you could love on them, praise the Lord. And that's why I'm saying about these people saying these crazy sayings and stuff like that, was probably better off that you didn't know and all that kind of stuff. No, you don't know that.
Yeah.
You just don't know that. And it doesn't help, because it didn't make me find them any faster. I was 65 years old when I first heard the voice of my mother.
Wow.
I'm 66 now. I just heard her voice for the first time in my life, was May 26th.
Mm-hmm. So you do know who your biological mother is now?
I know her face and I know her name, but I do not know the woman.
Have you met her before?
I met her once.
Okay. All right. Also, Deborah Menora says she appreciates your openness. I guess both of you, and I appreciate your openness, because and I know it takes a lot to share this, because some people will not accept it, but I believe that you're helping a lot of people by doing this. And so we're dealing with mental health, and I think the church is now beginning to become engaged in recognizing it. And I asked a question, we kind of went past it, and I started to you the last time, but I'm going to start with you, April. What do you think the church can do to better address the mental health issues? Tell me, what do you think?
I would say the first thing is to just be open. I was not open to a lot of things growing up because I was very resentful. So, but now that I've begun to educate myself on certain things, I'm a lot more open and forgiving. Like, now that I'm studying addiction, I know that I have fully forgiven my biological parents because I understand it better. I think that sometimes it just comes down to educating yourself, even if it's just reading a book or getting on Google, or even talking to a mental health professional. And I will also say, not to count people out. I think that a lot of times, I know from my own personal experience, I felt like I was always kind of counted out. And a lot of it was because of, different behaviors or maybe mood swings that I had. I can't blame anybody else. But I will say that a lot of times I was counted out because I didn't come from a well-known family. I was actually very much unknown, so I didn't come from a apostolic family. I didn't have that background. I just kind of came off the streets, and it was like, okay, you're cute and everything, but just stay right there in the pews and listen and watch. And I really did not get a chance, I guess, to kind of grow the way that I feel that I could have, if maybe I was a little more understood. I don't know if that makes sense, but I think that.
So that makes sense, but I guess my question I'll ask you, and then when I ask Dolly, how do you think, because some churches not aware of it, what can churches do to become more aware of it? Should they start groups in the church to address that? Should they do questionnaires to ask people what the needs are? What would you suggest, or how could they have done a better job?
Personally, the church that I attend would not probably be concerned, because if there's no one in the congregation that is in that situation, they're not going to address it. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't know what churches can do, really, to tell you the truth, because it's a private issue when it comes to the family. So we've been conditioned as Black people, what goes on in your house stays in your house. Well, so why are we going to bring it to church?
Right. And that used to be the idea. Was that the same way with you, April? Because I hear what you're saying, Dolly, and I can remember quite well, parents saying that, hey, what goes in this house stays here. And that's why some negative behaviors have been perpetuated because of silence. And so, I recently wrote a book called Walking Out of the Shadow of Pain, because a lot of people have been it's almost in the shadow. You're in the shadow, you're not seen, you're not heard. And so, the book is Walking Out of the Shadow of Pain, and dealing with the guide for addressing mental health, grief, loss, anxiety, depression, trauma in the church. I think that we need to deal with that. And I think this is just an avenue to begin to have an open dialogue. And I think it's important that we make the churches aware of what's going on. And sometimes we have to come out of the shadow. We have to, and when I say we, you, others have to be willing to, and Dolly, I've never known you to be real shy. So, so, so it may come a point where, I think maybe churches, we are the pandemic now. We can have forums. We can have forums in the church. I think this would be a good discussion to have in a church.
Absolutely.
In a church group,
yes.
Because it's such an important issue, and you are only two, but what impacted me, and I can understand how you experienced trauma, because what impacted me the last time when you were on here, you both, and if I can remember just like it was yesterday, April had said, well, you have been locked in the basement before. Is that correct, April?
Me too.
But you,
that was her.
We both was in. I was in the basement. Were you locked in the basement?
No, I was never locked.
I was locked in the basement.
It seemed like whatever you said, and I think Dolly said, well, I was thrown down the basement.
Thrown down the stairs, yes.
Down the stairs. So you were thrown down the stairs.
Yes, thrown.
So that really, and I remember that. I remember that. And these are things that a person should not have had to experience. Apostle Davis, God bless you. Thanks for joining us. My turn now. Sarah Cobb, we appreciate you joining. Rose Maxey says, let me see. You are never alone, and I know you hear this a lot. God's a covering. He's always been there. I don't know either one of you, but I love both of you. Love conquers all. It is forever. Thank you for sharing your stories. Your story is helping others in love. Be blessed. Thank you for sharing that. It's so true. Maria says, my mother has raised in foster homes with no parents, no siblings. Let me see. My mother was raised in foster homes with no parents and no siblings. This has helped me understand what my mom encountered. My mother spoke of sexual abuse and molestation. So you're helping others already. Sister Jamie Gonzalez says, the young lady Dolly has come a long way through her struggle. Also, April asked Dolly who said she was raped. Did she report it, and did she receive justice? Did anyone ever tell her not to tell or not to talk about it?
No. No. And I was raped in the church as well. So, wow. Here's the problem. You considering my age, I'm soon to be 67 in a few months. So this happened. If I can tell you, I'm talking to you like it happened yesterday. Mm-hmm. That's just how real these experiences are. There is nothing that you can make up. I feel, I can see I can smell what's on their breath. I can tell you what they look like. I can tell you what they were wearing. I can tell you all of that, because that's how deeply affected this was. Trauma is real. Trauma, you cannot explain away trauma. It happens and it manifests in multiple ways, as you know, as a health practitioner and so on like that. But those of us who are willing, you're right. A lot of us are too ashamed to tell anybody what's happening. When I was raped and molested as a baby girl, 4, 5, 6 years old. I finally told my mother, and she died after that. I held that. I carried that guilt for years because I didn't know that the woman was dying anyway when she adopted me. But when I told her I'm tired of this man kissing all over me and stuff, and she going, what are you talking about? I'm going like, yeah, he does that, And I started telling her all the stuff he was doing, and she going like, oh no. And the next thing we know, we done moved out of the state. And then she's in the hospital and she dies a few months later. So I'm thinking like because he told me don't ever tell nobody because this will go. They'll put you in jail. They'll put me in jail. So when you're being groomed and stuff like that, you are being controlled by fear. Why are you gonna tell somebody? And when I went through domestic violence, it was the same thing because these people were in church. I'm gonna tell you that this person that you got on your pulpit is doing this, and you gonna believe me? I don't think so. It don't work like that.
Right. So that's and trauma is very serious. I wrote a book. We have to be very careful in the church touching people. Some people have been assaulted, they've been raped, they've been molested, been abused, and some people don't want to be touched. And rightfully so, because it triggers, like I said, when you're dealing with trauma, you can smell something, and all of a sudden, just like it just happened yesterday, just happened like real. So I'm gonna ask you, April, because I don't know what your experience, what you feel comfortable, but some people who have experienced that don't want to be touched. And do you have any problem with people? Because in a lot of churches, we like to do a lot of hugging in church. We do a lot of hugging. Everybody's not feeling that. So, what are your thoughts about that?
I can't recall any sexual abuse, but I will say the household that I grew up in was not an affectionate household, so I am not a touchy-feely person at all. But as far as like sexual abuse, I was not abused in that way. I've experienced other forms of abuse, but that was not one.
Okay, very good. Let me see. Sister Jamie Gonzalez says, "Teach, girl. This is unfortunately real." So what you're doing, I guess, again, is pretty emotional for me to hear. I work as a therapist, but I deal with a lot of situations. But just hearing, because I know the impact that your experience have had on you. Again, and to say that you experienced some of that in the church, and I think it would maybe have been Jamie that asked you a question. Were you ever able to talk to anyone in the church or to an official in the church and expressing what happened to you?
I did, and it happened to be an apostolic church, and very prominent people, and they said that they would get back to me.
Get back to you.
Kind of like, well, we got more pressing things right now. How much money can we raise to get this? Or that what I experienced took a back seat. So it oftentimes it gives you the impression that you're not. Again, that adds to why you're not important, why your self-esteem is fragile, and so on like that. If the people who call themselves who know God, these are people who say they up preaching talking about they know Jesus. Okay, I know Jesus too, but Jesus didn't do this.
So once again, you're being minimized.
Exactly. And then okay, that's with the black people. Let's not talk about the white people, because I was initially molested by a white man because my adopted mother was married to a white man. So that was a turn off. I tried to run from white men whenever I saw them because I thought they were all the same. And men in general, I just, my marriages failed because I just didn't have intimacy. I couldn't establish intimacy because I never knew what intimacy was.
Yeah.
Love, what does that mean? What's her name said, what's love got to do it? You got that, people say that, that ain't Jesus. Again, if you haven't walked it, don't tell me what it's not. You cannot live what I've lived. You cannot explain it away. And that's what's the most frustrating of it, would make you not want to say anything unless. Now I've been asked to speak at a lot of women's meetings, and I gave my testimony very, very candidly, which how I'm speaking to you today. uh, and and that's the only time that it's most effective. It has to be in an environment that's inviting, that want to hear what they can do. Not It's not going to be a generalized pulpit message. This is going to have to be an in-depth 3-day conference kind of thing. Not how to grow your church, not how many people you can bring in by having a concert and stuff like that. I'm talking about legit. There are people that are actually hurting. That children are hurting children. We got kids that are abusing kids. I know there are a lot of the kids that are being abused. They were abused first. So that, and I thought that's why God punished me, that I couldn't have kids, because I was told that once you've been abused, you're going to be an abuser yourself. What lie did that come from?
Right. That's true. That doesn't have to be that way. You know. So let me ask you a question. I'm gonna ask you both a question. Um, and I want to say something too. April shared with me. You just recently lost your mom as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're sorry to hear that.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
sorry.
but anger, how, uh, sometimes I can see where that would produce anger. Uh, um, both of you share with us what type of anger you have associated with the way you were brought up.
Um, well, I guess just I don't think I really realized how angry I was until my youngest brother died back in 2020. He had overdosed on what we thought was heroin, which actually turned out to be fentanyl.
Oh,
And that triggered me something terrible, because my biological mom was a drug user, a drug abuser, and, which was the reason why she could not care for us. So for me, that really, it really made me angry, because I guess it was that nature versus nurture
Hmm.
um type situation, where it's like, you're the reason, why he was like this. He didn't know her. He
Hmm.
didn't know her. He knew of her, not much, but he knew that we were adopted.
Hmm.
My adopted mom adopted actually five of us, five of us, five of the seven. So
I just want to stop you just for a second because you brought up something very interesting point, and I want to explain to those who are listening. You said nature versus nurture.
yes.
So when you talk about nature versus nurture, you're talking about what part of your experience come from your surrounding, your environment. That's
Mhm.
nature, but you're talking about nurture is what's biological in your
Mhm.
DNA. So
Yep.
when she's saying how much of that came from her mother affecting your brother and
Hmm.
what part of the environment which he was in. So that's nature versus
mhm.
nurture. Which one has the biggest impact? Some say they both have impact, and some say that nature has more. So I'm sorry, I felt like that was something that wanted to share it, but you can continue on, April.
And in my right mind, I know it was both.
Hmm.
But at the time, I was really angry, especially when, she had reached out to me and she said, "Oh, I heard that Thomas died." And I was like, "Please don't speak to me. Because she would always pop up, when somebody passed away or when she wanted money or something like that. And so I just said, let it go. Don't bring him up again because you did not know him, and I got really angry because Thomas was adopted. If you read his obituary, he was adopted when he was a little baby. He was only a few months old. He was actually left in a burning building by her. And so he almost died, and he had a trach in his neck up until he was in kindergarten. And so when she reached out to me and said, did you know Thomas died? And I'm like, excuse, where did you come from? You never raised him. And so I'm like, but I know exactly where this drug abuse came from. It came from you, And so I was really, really angry with her. And I and I think that's when I realized that like as much as I tried to hide it or repress it, I was extremely bitter from that, just knowing that this is what I came from,
Right.
and I can't escape it.
Were you aware of the fact that there's nothing to do to justify your mom's action, but she was a victim of the cycle that she was on drugs and whatever caused her to become on drugs, and that's why we have to address these issues in the church, these addictions, because we want to break the the cycle of it, because you talking about generational curses, and she's a victim. And so the church has to be more proactive in dealing with mental health issues and with the drug and abuse issues. And these are serious because we have people in our church that are dealing with this. There are people in the church that are suffering silently, like yourself, and that's why I wrote the book "Coming Out of the Shadow of Darkness." And we want you to be able to come. The church should create an environment where people can come out and say, this is what I'm experiencing. And I think I would encourage anyone on here, approach your pastor, say, hey, we need a forum. We need to have an open dialogue on mental health, because you'd be surprised. There are a lot of folks dealing with mental health. You ladies not on a lot of folks.
That's
Hey,
right.
the truth be known, there's pastors that are stressed out.
And
They're
that's why I
That's right.
mentioned being
Absolutely.
open,
mm-hmm. Yep.
because I think that a lot of us are transparent until it comes to our own mental health struggles.
Right.
um you know and a lot of it is, well, just pray about it, and prayer works. It
Yes.
helps, it works. But I think that a lot of us and you know what, um a lot of people that I kind of, I can't say that I grew up in the church, but when I started going to an apostolic church, I was very resentful of people after a while, because I felt like, you guys act like you don't have no problems, you know. But like I said, as I study, the more I study, the more I realize a lot of them weren't taught, they weren't educated, and they don't understand it themselves. And so I think that, that has helped me, even with the ill feelings that I've had, towards the church or towards people within the church. I had to realize that, what, they don't understand me, they really don't understand themselves fully. I don't think any of us do. um and so I think that, mental health it is something that should be discussed across the board. It's not just for people like Dolly and I, that people look at us and say, oh my gosh, you've been through so much. I always tell people, my daughter has never and will never experience a lot of the trauma that I have.
Good.
However, my daughter deals with anxiety, and she has her own struggles, and I've learned not to minimize it.
Good.
Oh, well, I don't understand why, because in my head I'm like, I don't understand why she's behaving like this. I've given her everything. She's never been abused, but I have to understand that everybody's mental health struggles are not the same. Just because a child wasn't abused or their parents didn't leave them. You could have grown up in a 2-parent household and still had your own trauma.
True.
And so, that's why I mentioned being open to, the topic of mental health, because I think that for some people, they just don't understand it, because they associate mental health, mental illness with extreme trauma.
Right.
And that's not always the case.
Different types of mental health. Listen, we're going to just wrap up, because we have problems. I don't know why with the problems we actually have gone over, because this is our second segment. And I've had, this is the second time I had you ladies on here. I'm gonna have to get you on a little bit sooner, because I just think this we don't have enough time to kind of deal effectively with this subject like we should. Let me see. Marie says, "Thank you, ladies, for sharing. May the Lord Jesus continue to be your true covering." Let me see. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, let me see. Rose says, "Help us, Lord." Sis Walden says, "Thanks for sharing." Marie says, "Good idea. My church has recently began to facilitate panels to discuss individuals' situations and issues." Okay. Sister Jamie says, "Man, that's some sad facts about our churches. And this young lady is telling the truth. May God continue to bless them to speak out." I'm going to ask you one last question, just maybe 60 seconds. I'll start with you, Maria. Tell me, what has been the biggest resource you have for helping you to cope with what you dealt with?
Hands down, the Holy Ghost.
Amen. Very good. If it had not been for the Lord on my side.
Yeah.
Truly. And here's why I say that, because the Holy Ghost does exactly what he's supposed to do: lead you and guide you in all truth, tell you of things to come, and bring to your remembrance those things that you've been taught. So having the Holy Ghost has done exactly that, led me to truth, brought things to my memory that I was taught some years ago, or a few weeks ago, or something like that, and will just do exactly what he says he's going to do: comfort you. He that's what he's been, a
Amen.
comforter.
The psalmist said, "I would fain lest I have believed to see the goodness of the Lord." So I look at you ladies and the challenge you've been through, but just think about that person that doesn't know God. Just think, how they deal with it. April, tell me how you been able to cope with.
Like she said, the Holy Ghost, coming to terms with different things, and also educating myself. That has been the biggest help, because we can pray and pray and pray and rely on God, but I think that it really takes, learning and gaining wisdom and knowledge, in order to really learn how to treat people and how to forgive. So for me, that's been the biggest help for me.
Very good. Sister Sarah says, "My Lord." Marie says, "Yes, ladies, continue to speak out loud and clear." This has just been one area of mental health. There's a lot of challenges that the church has to address if we're going to be effective. Like you said, faith without works is dead. You can tell people, "I am praying for you," but I think we all need a support system.
Mm-hmm.
I dealt with, I facilitate group therapy for Overeaters Anonymous. We may need some mental health therapy group sessions in our churches, or but sometimes we talk about everything else but that, and it's prevalent. Stress with the COVID, there's so many things that's going on. People losing loved ones. It can cause anxiety, stress, depression from that. And again, as Maria was saying, you can't say, "Honey, I understand." Nobody knows what you feel, and
Yeah.
so we try to just brush off what people are feeling, the emotions, in just a few words, but that's not the answer. And so it does take time. It takes prayer. It does take understanding. As April said, it takes educating, and the church has to be more educated. We have to educate ourselves. One of the things, Maria, you share with me, we call her Maria, we call her Dolly. So, uh, and Maria is a very good singer. You still singing, Maria? I remember you used to be a good singer. You still singing?
Yeah.
Uh, one, of, one of the things, Maria, that you share with me when we talk, that you are in the process of writing a book.
Yes.
And I'm sure that has helped you through the process. And when I wrote my book called The Empty Quiver, it helped me to process my loss, which was very helpful. So I encourage my clients to journal their emotions, journal what they're experiencing, journal pain. It helps to journal. So if someone's on here, you're dealing with pain, write down your emotions and express them, and that helps a lot to journalize that. April, I'm sure you're a good mom.
Yeah, I try.
Hey, we all try. It's not always easy for any of us. We always thought when we were coming up we're gonna be better than our parents were, but sometimes we find ourselves being our parents. So it's not always so easy. But I think at the end of the day, when people recognize true love, and that's the best thing you can give your daughter, is to love her unconditionally. And I think that's what the church needs to do. Church needs to, welcome people unconditionally. Say, hey, we love you just as you are, just like Jesus did. So, ladies, we love you just as you are. You both be encouraged, and I encourage, if you need counseling, seek counselors. Don't be ashamed. Anyone watching, don't be afraid to get counseling. Help
Thank you.
yourself. It will make you that much better. Help yourself. Well, April, it's getting kind of late. I know, April, you're starting to
No.
yell. But listen, you ladies, I applaud you both for coming on here, for sharing your individual stories. You don't know who all you blessed as a result of this. Also, FYI, today was Ladies Awareness Day, which means they were encouraging ladies to take care of yourself, examine yourself wherever exam. That's what today was. But it doesn't have to be today. Encourage you to take care of yourself. Take care of your mental health. Do your checkups. Tell men, take care of yourself. Men need to do their checkups. Whatever you have to do it. Self care. Take care of yourself. Listen, we love you. God bless you. Continue to share. Those who are watching us, continue to share. A lot of times people watch afterwards. We actually got going late, so there's some people probably saw it wasn't on. They may have just left, but our attention span is not too long. They look at 8 o'clock and I'm on here. Someone said I was on here at 8:01. You weren't there, so I didn't think you were going to be on there. So
Right.
go ahead and feel free to share this right here. And if you're watching this, give a comment. I'm going to say this right here. If there's an episode that you've seen on here, because this is going on 3 years, please let me know. Inbox me. Let me know if there's a guest that you really enjoy seeing. Inbox me. Let me know if there's an episode that you want to be repeated. Again, this is one of my most touching episodes with you ladies. You ladies did a fantastic job, and I certainly respect and appreciate your transparency. I wish nothing but the best for you ladies, and pray that God continue to bless you, that God continue to encourage you, and realize that you're both special. All right.
Thank you. Same to
Thank
you.
you.
All right.
And
And
it's good to see you again, Dolly.
Yes, and you've grown beautifully.
Thank you. You too.
thank you all for watching this program. Join us again next week for It's My Turn Now. In the meantime, be blessed.
Okay.
Take care of your mental health, whatever you do.